So the first speaker is going to be Ryan Letourneau. Did I get it right? Letourneau, excuse me, Letourneau from Grain Ecosystems, Boston. And he's going to be talking about the building blocks of carbon removal projects. So take it away.
All right, great. Thanks, Kim. Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan Letourneau, co-founder, CEO at Grain Ecosystem. For those of you that haven't met me yet, at Grain, what we do is we work on helping project developers navigate the voluntary carbon markets, as well as match with investors and equipment providers that fit their project and meet their needs. So today, I'm going to share a few slides, and as Kim kindly mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about financing in practice, which is a continuation of the panel that we had this morning on the building blocks of biochar project finance. And so I'm going to share some slides with you that is really based on our experience at Grain over the last 2 years working with project developers. This is educational material, is not financial advice, so let's not make any rash decisions based on what you're going to see here. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. But I'm very excited to be sharing with you all this knowledge that we've been learning, and hope that you find it useful when having your conversations and thinking through the structures of your project. So you'll recall this morning what we shared with you is that the way that Grain thinks through the building blocks of biochar project finance is that we have 5 key areas which projects are made up of. And as mentioned, we find that projects tend to have some mix of these. And just to revisit them, we have grants, which is usually funding that you receive that does not need to be paid back. Bank loans, senior debt, secured, unsecured loans, but from a financial institution, which does expect to be paid back. Junior debt, which is sometimes referred to as mezz debt or mezzanine debt in the industry. Carbon removal credit pre-purchase, which can take several different forms, and equity financing to close the capital stack. And each one of these are an investment, right? And so even if it's a grant, they're investing in you to deliver on something that is going to help that organization with their mission. So it's important to recognize that all of these are a partnership, and you are committing to play your role in the partnership, which is either a return of capital, a return on mission, or a return otherwise. And so when we think through these elements, we like to think of them in terms of cost of capital, and cost of capital is something that fluctuates with market rates, right? And it's really the opportunity cost to invest in another opportunity. And directionally, this is the way we think through it. Again, changes all the time with market rates. But when we look at the different elements in the stack, we realize that some are maybe a little bit more expensive than others, but they come with benefits, right? And different costs of capital means that the investor is most likely being compensated for an additional set of risk. When we think of things like liquidity preference, for example, when you are the first one on the stack in terms of liquidity preference, you're okay to take a little less in terms of return because you're the one that's going to be paid back if things go bad. And so there has to be some sort of mix, and a lot of the projects we see are looking for some sort of risk. But they don't all come in the same size. Again, the answer is always that it depends. But what I'd like to share with you is just what does it mean to be equity financing, and that it's not just a term or one size fits all. So now, in terms of the capital stack, there are options within each one of these groups. And when we think in terms of equity financing, we're thinking that there's really 3 key categories. Again, you could split hairs and continue down, but we have philanthropic capital, which is usually looking for a 1 to 2x return on that capital. We have private equity, which is looking for a 2 to 4x multiple on invested capital, and venture capital, which is 5x, 10x, unicorn status is what they're really looking for. And so depending on the type of business you're running, the scale potential, how you're looking to grow, one of these groups may be a better fit for you. Not every approach or company is a right fit for a venture capital model, just because it's a grow at all costs model usually, and you need to make sure that it's a right partnership and a right fit. When we think of pre-purchase agreements, we've highlighted 3 different agreements. There's a lot of room for creativity in this space, but I think these are the three that we see that are the most common. You have direct-to-business pre-purchase, which is, when we think about it in a comparison to kind of the CorkX index, usually you're getting a discount to market prices. And that's because the organization that is buying those credits is paying up front. So you're getting the capital today instead of in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, which is what a forward purchase agreement would give you. And this is usually directly with one buyer, one corporate. It is out of the three types of pre-purchase, it is the slowest model usually, because you're taking time to find that right partner, that right corporate, usually on your own. Then the next one is a credit sales through partner. And credit sales through partners, again, usually a discount to market price, and you usually pay a commission to that partner to help you with that, but it's usually faster. And the speed in which you get your capital is usually a great advantage and benefit, especially when we're thinking about getting these projects up and running. As we know, a lot of folks in the investment space say time killed deals. Few folks have told me that a lot of times over the last couple of years. And so this is something that people like to look at, is speed is important. And so if we're thinking of even further on the speed side, credit streaming agreements, we heard Alec talk about these this morning at Carbon Streaming Corporation. And basically they talk about giving you cash up front for credit representation. So they will represent your credits, 100% of your credits, and you receive a royalty on the realized price. Again, it's the fastest form because it's filling a pre-secured demand most of the time. Junior debt, this is usually uncommon as kind of a standalone vehicle. It's mixed with an equity investment or one of these other kinds of investments. It does happen, but it is generally uncommon. The bank loan types, so there are USDA loans that are available for these kinds of projects around rural development, business and industry, a few other types which Tanner Martin can tell you guys all about, and as well as small business administration loans, SBA loans as they're often referred to. And the last piece of the capital stack, the grants, there are a lot of grants out there. I don't pretend to be an expert in grants because there are so many, but these are some resources, and I believe you're all going to get these slides later on. So U.S. Forestry Service, opengrants.com, grants.gov, SBIR.gov, state incentives, and the EPA. Are all great resources to find grants, and oftentimes they are specific to your project. Some of these grants even are written for things like having a facility that can be used for educational purposes, which is really kind of outside the remit of what we think of when we're doing biochar, but really a great opportunity for a project developer who's doing something maybe a little bit different or a little bit new, and to really get you started on that capital stack. And so now that we talked a little bit about what are the options, what does it look like within the capital stack, I want to share a little bit with you what we've seen that works in terms of structures or models. And so there's really what works is the right mix. And I think that's a really important point, is that if you're going to finance an opportunity, you are 9 times out of 10 going to have more than one capital partner or investment partner, unless you're financing it yourself. And so these are two scenarios that we like to highlight to a lot of the folks who are using grain. So first is scenario A, where you have a mix between bank loans, carbon removal, credit pre-purchase, and equity financing. And usually the bank loan will come with a 20% capital that is gathered through the equity financing and the carbon credits. And scenario B is grants with matching funds. So you get a grant from an organization, and to get that grant, you have to raise or secure the matching funds. And those matching funds can come in the form of bank loans or equity financing or one of these other mechanisms. But these are the two models in practice that we see the most common that are having success. And so I know that those are percentages, and I think it's a good practice to try and put some numbers next to it to make it make a little bit more tangible sense. So the following numbers are examples drawn from experience. They are not representative of any one project. They're just a directional idea, not one technology, not one feedstock, anything to that effect. So you can take it with a grain of salt, but it at least gives you an idea of how these projects are made up potentially financially. And so in this example, we're referencing a food processing plant that converts peels and other food waste into biochar. These plans to install a stationary pyrolysis unit to manage the total food residues produced by the facility. And here, this is where the conversation with investors usually goes, is what are your uses and what are your sources? So basically, when we say uses, how are you going to use the funds that you raise? And sources, where is it coming from? And so in this example, you've got uses that are split across your pyrolysis equipment, which is a little under 50% of the project, construction expenses, operating expenses for year one, and then things like land, insurance, and carbon expenses. And this project is financed through example A, or scenario A, which is $4 million in bank loans, which is about 80%. It's 10% in carbon credit pre-purchases and 10% in equity financing. And these sources of capital are USDA loans for the bank loans, streaming agreements, and private equity. So this is just one example of what it looks like in practice. The second example, scenario B, is that a company is working to remove forestry byproducts generated by forest management activities. They are working in alignment with a statewide initiative to find new ways of preventing forest fires in their community. Again, this is probably a mobile unit, so the cost here somewhere around $1 million in this estimated example. Construction expenses, operating expenses, year one feedstocks, land issuance, and carbon credits for year one. So a $2 million investment in total, $1 million coming from a grant. In this example, the U.S. Forestry Innovation Grant. It requires matching funds for this issuance, 40% coming from the SBA loans or $800K, and then 10% from some philanthropic capital that wants to see forest fire mitigation done in their communities. And so this is example B, aligned with sort of the percentages that we shared earlier, but putting some numbers next to it so you can start to see, if you're doing a project, how this could work in practice for your facilities. And I think if we talk about what does work, one of the other pieces is what doesn't work. And we have a lot of conversations as we're helping project developers, and they usually start with, okay, how much can I get for my pre-purchase of carbon credits? And it's a tough place to start because oftentimes a pre-purchaser or even a partner that's going to help you with the pre-purchase, it's a lot of risk to take on without having another source of capital in that equation. And so when there are no other stakeholders ensuring that the project is executed and delivered, it's just the two of you, and it gets to be really complicated. So I won't say it never works, but I will say oftentimes this is not a good approach in practice. The second one is a 50% matching grant with 50% bank loans. This creates a circular challenge or perpetual loop of waiting for the other one to go first. The bank will say you need X amount of capital in order to secure your loan. The grant will say you need X amount of capital matching to secure your grant. So unless you have another source of funds, whether that's junior debt, carbon removal credit pre-purchase, or equity financing, it's going to be very, very hard and near, I say, impossible to close this kind of financing deal. So that's what you need to think about. And what I'd like to illustrate with these two examples is just fundamentally how difficult it is to finance a project with only one or two parties. You are oftentimes looking for multiple sources of capital. And so a few of sort of the best practices, just want to share that with you. When we're thinking about the risk criteria that we had spoken about earlier today, when we think about supply chain, one of the important pieces is that you have to show that with documented proof that you have access or ownership of feedstocks. Historical production logs are a good example, legal documents showing you have a right to it, contracts written with legal counsel, experience in biomass. These are really important pieces to make sure that you're securing the supply chain side of the equation, and something that is often going to work well for you as you continue forward. When we think about equipment, we have a lot of conversations about, oh, this equipment's good, this one's cheaper. What's really important when you're going to go out for financing is that you select your equipment first, that you build a plan for your cost of capital, you have an idea of where you're going, and you stick to that plan at least until you get to sort of the end state. If you want to try to optimize for costs later, that is a great conversation to have, but what investors are looking for is a committed plan and you knowing what you want to do with the money once you secure it. It creates trust. They trust that you're going to execute according to the plan, and helps you move forward. Third, biochar offtake. So I updated this slide, but it didn't get in here. So code 336, don't assume that farmers are aware of it and that they're willing to apply your char. There's a lot of education that has to happen around this, obviously with your targeted off-takers. So connecting with local farmers, joining local working groups, and last piece, carbon credits. So investors are looking for assurance that project revenues will be generated and or secured, whether that's char or credits. But working with a carbon partner is one way that you can absolutely ensure that you're going to get those credit revenues. And it's a good partnership and creates trust and credibility in your project. So I know we're getting close to the end of time here. If you want to talk more, come by the booth. Get ready to build your capital stack. That's what Grain's here to do and to help with. But wanted to spend some time on questions and answers. And Kim, I let you tell me if we have enough time.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, the deals are getting funded, getting announced. Nexus Development Capital that was with us this morning, they put $5 million into Standard. So there's financing happening. And a lot of folks are getting into this space knowing that this is the beginning and investing in projects, particularly the ones that have the opportunity for scale. That's where a lot of the early capital is going, learning the space through small check sizes and looking to grow. And I know there's some larger funds that are being put together that are going to start deploying some capital. Yeah, absolutely, and I think there are a lot of folks that are finding the appetite. There's some venture capital that's going into this space who are funding tools like that. I think down in the exhibit hall, there's a few folks that are starting to work on some tools that are going to bring the community together. You know, that's where we started at Grain as well, as a digital tool to bring this community together and try and bridge some of those gaps, and we found our space in financing. And so, yeah, the community continues to mature, continues to grow, lots of new entrants coming into the space, and it has a lot of room for to mature. And we have the IBI and the US Biochar initiative that are really bringing us all together for these kinds of conferences, and we're seeing it grow double year on year. I think there's really exciting projections for next year in Minneapolis. So it's coming together, but it's, you know, to your point, it's new, it's small. It's not new, but it's smaller. It's starting to have some of those similarities to maybe what we saw in healthcare, or a lot of times when I reference it in the solar industry and what happened about 10 years ago. Yeah, absolutely. So we help the project developer through the origination stage, which is getting you situated up and ready to go. Well, if you have a carbon partner, then you probably don't need us at this stage. But one of the things that's really interesting is as you start to build your first project, I imagine that's not your last project. And so at Grain, you know, we're looking to help you with the next one. So once you're working on it and proving out your business case, when you're ready to do the next one and finance the next one, we'd like to be your partner to help you find the best source of capital. Yeah, so our business model is a SaaS subscription model. So it's a subscription. You pay an annual fee to belong to the platform and to the ecosystem. We don't charge any sort of brokerage fees. We're not a broker dealer. So it's just a fee to belong to the ecosystem. No, we don't. Today we don't, but ecosystem is an important word, especially in a hyper-fragmented landscape where a lot of folks are very specialized, and we're just looking to bring it all together. But no, we don't work in that ecosystem particularly. Yeah, so most of the projects on our platform are usually looking for about $500 to $10 million per facility. Some of those have larger project sizes, but it's usually multiple facilities, and that's the ticket size that we see folks and investors interested in today. I think it's the whole stack, right? It's putting it together from end to end, having the right balance, making sure you have it in the right order, and so for us, we have folks that are playing in each space in the stack. I don't think there's one that's lacking more than the others. Of course, we always need more. We always want more. And one of the things that we're doing at Grain is educating investors on the opportunity and showing them what's possible.
Any more questions? I do have one question. Do you connect potential funding sources with a project person, with a new venture at all? Do you introduce people as potential funders?
Happy to make introductions for VC type stuff, but we don't have any VCs on the platform. We find that this space isn't necessarily looking for venture capital for their facilities, but knowing there are new technologies looking for VC, we can talk offline, Kim.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time today.
Biochar.org appreciates the support of our sponsors, exhibitors, presenters, and attendees. We look forward to seeing you at our next conference in September 2025.